Good afternoon, and welcome to everybody to join us in a very cold UK, for those of you who are not from the UK today. My name is Forid Meah. I'm Head of Advisory here at Arum, and your regular host on the Arum Approved web chats. Today, I'd like to introduce Kyle. Kyle, please, can you introduce yourself and tell us a bit about what you're going to talk to us about today?
Yeah, of course. Thank you very much. So today I want to spend a little bit of time going through something I think is in every business's mind at the moment, which is AI, but maybe from a slightly different kind of angle. And some of the stuff that we've been really thinking about over the past kind of year or two, and where we kind of see the market going, and some of the changes that we need to start to kind of consider. So what I'll be going through is how to defend your business when every customer has an AI lawyer. Bit of an intro. I'm Kyle. I'm the founder and CEO over at Financial Cloud. We provide a financial CRM system out to banks, lenders, debt collection companies, purchasers, law firms, helping people kind of manage financial relationships at scale. If I just jump really kind of straight in, and I want to really kind of address, I suppose, where we see kind of some of the problems kind of lying over the next kind of couple of years. Happy enough, if anyone wants to ask questions, we'll have obviously some time for that. So I'm more than happy to kind of go through those and understand if there's any more insight that someone else can provide, or if there's any questions maybe I've kind of not covered off that folk would be interested in hearing more about. But and to caveat this, there's different types of AI, and that's one thing, first of all, that I kind of want to go into. There's AI, which is the kind of the full heading that everyone kind of talks about, but there are kind of subcategories to that. So what I'm really, I suppose, going to be looking at, and we'll go into it more on the solution side, is not just kind of generative AI, which is a single aspect of it, but how we can use some of the more advanced models to operationalize like agentic AI and so forth in solutions. So the issue I think that we're not kind of exploring now, and I think we will be talking about more over the next kind of couple of years, is a big trend in the market when we're speaking to organizations just now is everyone's looking at how do they use AI in their business? How do they go ahead and make things more efficient? Take manual processes just now and make them more efficient, utilizing AI within kind of their operation. And that's very much a kind of an inward look. And I think what I don't hear much about, and we're starting to see more and more of it, is we're not looking at how consumers are going to be using AI. We're looking in the wrong direction. So what we think is really the real disruption we're going to see over the next kind of couple of years, and I'd be really surprised if people on this call are not already using AI, is how are we going to start using our day-to-day lives? And if we're using it in our day-to-day lives, how are we going to use it to manage financial services? And the problem that I want to put is there will probably be an app that comes out in the next 5 years, which will be used and help consumers to manage their relationships with financial organizations with the use of AI. And that problem that we're going to find is only one popular app away. Whether it comes in 1 year, whether it comes in 2, 3, 4, or 5 years, it will be coming. There's already been basic versions of it. We're just waiting for when is that going to hit. Now, what does that actually mean? And that's what I want to kind of delve into, is the way we probably see this is probably going to happen is that at the moment there's a lot of budgeting apps out there. There's organizations are putting stuff into their, you go on to some banking apps and they already provide budgeting information. And some of the financial kind of apps that consumers already have access to do stuff like, if you have been promised a refund because something's happened wrong at a shop, it will check to make sure that happens. There's just basic checks that come into play that are convenience. We see that kind of expanding out, and AI is really going to help consumers better audit their financial lives. So what that could look like is it'll be able to audit, for example, the fees, cross-reference like contracts, because when you take out a loan, that actual document could be stored against an input into their financial app, in which case it'll understand exactly what is to be expected and what's not expected, so that if something goes wrong, rather than it being something that you fix before the consumer knows about it and then you inform them about it, they may well know about it before you know about it and automatically have their app contact them and notify them that something is arise and give them an automated response to send through to you. And that's something that's quite interesting because it flips really, I suppose, the onus of how you're going to deal with issues, because you're not going to have the time that you deal with it and then inform the customer because it's quite a complex issue that maybe they haven't seen or the majority of them haven't seen. It's going to start being that, and even if it's not every customer, if it's only 5, 10, 15, 20% of your customers, that's a meaningful number of additional queries, complaints, or disputes that are going to start coming into kind of your organization. So I think really what we have to think about there is that is going to cause operational difficulties, and if we look at how that is really going to play out, something happens, that a mistake happens, and all of a sudden, even if a small percentage of your customers, just now, the customers that really see that, it's probably really small. But if people start using kind of apps to manage kind of their finances, what we're going to start to see is these AIs are going to automatically kind of pick up on it. And we're going to start to see automated responses coming through that are well formatted. I'm sure all of us today have probably used AI to go ahead and format responses to emails. Some people probably have even used it for generating complaints themselves. But a lot of this is manual just now. You go on to the actual AI, so whether that's Gemini, ChatGPT, whatever different kind of solution it is, and you type, I suppose, up what the issue is, and it generates a response, and you paste it in. A lot of that is manual steps. What we're going to start to see is they're going to be a lot more proactive about it. And the responses that actually get generated by AIs tend to be very comprehensive. They're able to look into not just, I suppose, the loan document itself, but it can look at regulatory documents. It could look at, industry norms. It's going to be able to produce a query or a dispute which looks like it's from a lawyer. And the challenge that we see there is in twofold. One, a query like that's harder to deal with because it's going to reference lots of stuff and it's going to take longer to get a conclusive answer back. But secondary to that, it might not actually be right. But due to the way that things are currently set up in the industry, you need to respond to it and correct it. So you're going to have to go ahead and take that incorrect answer, find out what's incorrect about it, and then generate a response to that customer that informs them that what they've actually said isn't correct. And that might not be 100% clear, to a first line dispute agent. It might need to be referred up the line. So we see the kind of cost to actually service these type of queries increasing. And we've seen that, over the past year or two, we've seen that the kind of claims management companies and obviously the regulators stepped in there to obviously put fees in place that each one raised by a claims management company would have a fee attached to it. But you can't really do that for consumers because it's the right of the consumer to come directly to you. It's not through a third party, so they need the ability to actually raise this. So that's something we just see as it's something we're going to start to see more of, and that we need to start to consider how will we deal with it and having discussions with regulators on it. Now, the inevitable kind of consequence in the short to medium term is that we're going to have larger kind of operational queues to deal with because we're going to have more queries, complaints, disputes coming on through. And even if we try to use AI ourselves to go ahead and combat it, a lot of people just now aren't really kind of set up in a manner to deal with this easily. Systems aren't really designed for AI just now. We tend to have an industry which is very much kind of batch processing based. You know, a lot of companies use CSVs, they do things nightly. It's not real time, a lot of this stuff that's kind of coming through, which means that the actual way the systems operate and the way the AI systems operate, they don't really kind of mix and match very nicely. And we're likely to see that kind of the infrastructure that kind of holds everything together just now isn't going to cope massively well with this kind of like additional demand that kind of comes into play. And will put kind of some strain kind of on the systems there and some bottlenecks. And I think what we probably need to start talking about is, well, how do we actually deal with, you know, if you get a much higher number of queries through from a customer, you might not meet the actual allotted timeframes that you have to deal with these, which might mean that you incur fines through no fault really of your own. It's just the capacity is massively kind of increased. And do you keep expanding, you know, your operational headcount to deal with it? And I think that's something we very much kind of have to kind of at least think about just now on how we would deal with that, and figure out, I suppose, kind of what next steps would kind of look like. Now, what we kind of want to put across, I suppose, is really kind of what our kind of vision for that really looks like. I think organizations need to move to, and we need to look at how do we create systems that can help to improve the response rate, make it much quicker, but also make it accurate. You know, these are going to be complex queries that come through, so we need responses which are accurate and pull in the data that is relevant, so that when you do respond to it, it's not a generic response, it's a response that answers it based upon not just the query itself, but the customer's information, your business's processes, and just the general kind of regulatory landscape that is in situ at that point in time. There's no point providing a generic response because it might not meet that specific query. And without that, we see there being quite a large kind of cost increase. So custom kind of solution, really we need to start to look at, it's not just using kind of generative AI to build a response. We can do that easily. What you need to look at is context. You need that context to match the actual response that you want. So that might include, for example, you have to put in customer data into that. You need to include the your actual organization policies, and that needs to be dynamically built into the context of the AI so that it can use these information and data in its actual knowledge base in order to come up with a sensible response that it can actually send back to a customer and make a response of. We don't really think at this stage, to be honest, that AI is in a position that it should be doing those responses itself. I think that's a good way off. And we're not even sure, to be honest, if it's going to get there, just due to the way that some of the maths works in these models. And that comes down to, you know, it's fine in sales and marketing if things are wrong, you know, 5% of the time. You know, you just don't get the sale. You know, it's not a lead that converts. You can't really have that in financial services. You need to be correct. You can't just be expecting things to be wrong some of the time. So we see there being much more of a human in the loop approach, where AI will go ahead and look at the context provided and provide a sensible, accurate answer back, which it suggests, for an agent to then review, ensure that it meets what's expected, and can approve it to then carry on to the next step and automate that kind of process thereafter. But we think there should really be kind of a review and authorization process built directly into the system. And a lot of this comes through the ability to centralize kind of our data and really embed these processes within our systems. We don't want to have like one system with bolt-on systems all around it, because what you end up having is silos of data, which is really difficult to plumb all of that information together in order to really come up with kind of an answer which is accurate based upon that customer situation. So I think that's, you know, foundationally is kind of like key, is that we need to get our house in order from the data side, so that the steps kind of beyond that. We have like a clear context that these models can kind of work from to get the best, most accurate and compliant answers through. Without that, we're just creating work for work's sake, because agents are having to go and review stuff that they're constantly having to change. They might as well have just read it themselves in the first place. So how does that look? And I just want to go through a couple of different kind of pillars there. We see the first instance there really being we can use AI to triage. Okay, so a query comes in, we can have it look through that and just apply tags, for example, that, hey, this looks like complete, and just route things through to the correct people so that we have fewer manual steps involved in administrating where pieces go through to. And that's done via just automatic kind of categorization, and then potentially using that categorization to understand, for example, if we get several queries through and actually they all match. So e.g., we've had a query through and it's from 50 customers, but actually it's all the same thing. That's really kind of one response. And that response, it might be slightly different and personalized per customer, but what we don't want to do is process it 50 times. We want to understand that it's the same query, and that we go ahead and we generate a response which can then be kind of tailored to individual customers. But we don't want to process it 50 times, because even though AI could potentially automate that, there is a cost involved in running AI, and that's something we need to be clear about. It's not free, and the more kind of complex and the bigger kind of the context windows that we actually provide over to these AIs, we're going to understand that it can be anywhere from 20 pence, but it could be up to a few pounds to actually run these sometimes, which in the grand scheme of things, is cheaper than an agent still working an hour on something. But it's a cost that we need to understand, and we should try to make as efficient as possible. The second piece, I think, which is I think we should just do anyway, no matter whether it's AI or not, is we should just be as transparent as possible. A lot of people's customer portals at the moment are very much geared towards, here's your balance, and make a payment. We should be making these the self-service aspect for customers completely transparent. Give them the information that they need in order to understand that they shouldn't be disputing anything. And that's more that one, the customer can easily access it, and they can easily kind of see all the documentation that's available there, and logically understand why it's a valid account. Or if they are disputing something, that the data is there that they can actually source themselves, that actually you could just refer them back to the portal to gain that kind of information. So yeah, radical transparency, I think, is really kind of important there. And we could embed, for example, additional, whether it's calculators, but just things to help the customer better understand it. Because if we can go ahead and build something small that helps them understand something, rather than having to ask for it every single time, again, that's going to reduce down the amount of time that we need to spend with customers, and both them having pain points and us having pain points. It just kind of smooths that out. The additional benefit there is AI will become smart enough that it will be able to dip in itself and gain access to that information. And we probably do want it to have access to it, because we want it to have access to understand that, yeah, it's valid, it's clean, they don't have any queries on it, because we shouldn't really be chasing debts that aren't valid anyway. That's just the nature of what we should be doing. The second point, which I've touched on previously, is I think this human in the loop approach is key. From a compliance perspective, I don't think we are, if anyone is trying to sell you that they can automate your processes with AI, I think you need to take a bit of a pinch of salt. They might be able to automate generalist responses, but we've had that for years. We've had that, my goodness, since I worked back in banks, like 15 years ago. People call up IVRs, they ask for balance, they get a response. That's not AI. That is using speech to text and then using the logical answers. And yeah, you can layer in AI into that, but it is just a slight upgrade there. It's not using AI to actually understand an answer. And it's not to discredit that. That's completely valid. And if it cuts down the amount of work that you've got to do, 100% use it. But people that say that they're going to use AI to completely deal with anything that's more complex than things which are logically able to be programmed in, I think that's something that risk and compliance should really kind of raise their hand and really kind of question that, because the way that these models are built and the maths that's used, it's patterns, and those patterns will not 100% be correct. And like I say, that's fine for some instances, but I don't think that's the way that it needs to work in financial services. I think we need to have better kind of diligence in the output that these are having and be able to hold them to account. And that's where, having kind of a human in the loop, where we have a response with what we coin as like a decision cockpit. Hey, this is the response that we suggest, and here's information on the customer and the query that came through. Do you approve it or do you not approve it? We change things from being, hey, we have to compose a response, to we just have to click a button to approve a response. It's already a massive time saving in itself, and should elevate kind of the quality of responses across the board. And it also allows us then to actually improve the AI over time by getting that kind of manual feedback from an agent, an expert within our business that can turn around and say that, hey, that response is really good, versus actually that wasn't a good response, we need to make tweaks to it. That's something we can put into the actual learning process of the model to iteratively make it better and better kind of over time. So I think our aim is to get as much benefit as possible, without while maintaining, I suppose, kind of accountability within our kind of businesses when using this technology. And finally, what we really want is we don't then want to just leave it there. It composes a message. We want it to understand as well, what should the subsequent actions be? And not for us to just be like, hey, okay, a status should change, or we should ping off this email, and we should actually raise a dashboard over to a task for another department to do. We want it to automatically do that. If we approve it, we then don't want our agents going in and actually having to click around and trigger all this off. We also don't want to have to program all that. That's a lot of rules to be putting in, for every single scenario. It'd be much better if AI can actually go in and it can carry out the action that we've approved for us, really making it an awful lot more efficient, and kind of filling in, I suppose, those kind of administrative gaps, and providing kind of a seamless, auditable process end to end. And I think that is really kind of a solution that, to me, you get an awful lot out of, without it creating unnecessary risk within our kind of businesses. So a lot of that is moving to a proactive care approach. We should be working with our customers to understand what is best for them, and moving away from this reactive and defensive model, or aggressive kind of tactics, which I think the industry has made huge strides over the past like 10, 15 years. We just want to elevate that even further. And I think AI will really kind of help that, being able to understand events and triggers that are happening, that we can get involved with customers earlier on in their journeys, that we can help them at source, rather than waiting for them to get too deep and then having to kind of like, help them kind of out of their problems. So really been seen as trusted partners there. The other bit I think we need to do is we need to be proactive with the regulators. I think we need to be having conversations around where actually we see there being potential problems over the next 5 years that maybe the regulators aren't currently seeing, and or they might actually be talking about this stuff internally, but it's just trying to get having better observability over kind of what they're talking about, what they're doing, and what they see issues being, and being kind of transparent around how they how they would generally they see it kind of working for ourselves and from both technology providers, from regulated firms, and for the regulator and consumers, how to all interact sensibly, that we don't cause problems. So things that I think would be really useful for people to think about over the next kind of like year would be sit down and you know, most of you I'm sure already kind of do this when running kind of your quarterly or your annual kind of risk reviews, is just ask yourself, if you had 1,000 customers submit a complaint tomorrow, what would your current processes look like to deal with that, and how would you deal with it? Can your current infrastructure, I'm not saying everyone's on legacy, but even if you're in a modern stack, like how would it handle that? You know, where are your bottlenecks? And if you do come across kind of problems there, it's, I think, really kind of looking now, because it's not going to be a journey where you correct this in a few months. It is going to be a slightly longer process in order to kind of ready yourself, I suppose, for what we see kind of happening over the next 5 years. It's starting it now, even if you're getting into kind of the planning phases of that, rather than waiting to when it's actually a problem. And I think those steps will really kind of help highlight kind of the gaps and help you kind of understand, well, what do you need to do kind of about that. We do one-to-one strategy sessions with companies. If anyone is interested in understanding, you know, data organization, how they can use their data better, how they can then plumb AI into that, we're more than happy to kind of sit down and have general conversations across different systems to chat through what you think your problems are, or even just kind of solutionize, you know, what things could look like. So yeah, get in touch with me if you want to have a conversation on that, and I'm sure obviously Arum are more than happy to have those conversations as well. They're very kind of good at this stuff, so either of us are good to have solo or joint kind of conversations regarding that. I've really enjoyed talking through this. It's an area of real kind of interest at Financial Cloud. We've been working with AI now for several years, and we're really looking forward to be able to kind of roll it out more and more kind of actually into kind of businesses. So any kind of questions that anyone has, more than happy to kind of catch up. I'll be at tomorrow's conference up in Manchester. If anyone's there, give me a shout. Love to have some conversations, hear some thoughts on it, if anyone is available. And I will pass on back to yourself. Sure.
Thanks, Carl. That's very interesting. And if anyone would like to ask any questions, please do use the Q&A in the tab there to post your questions, and I'll happily ask those of Carl on your behalf. So, Carl, let's just talk about some of the very interesting sort of points that you raise in that introduction there. You sort of said, look, in the next 5 years is sort of the window you're looking at. What's your gut feel? Is it 5 years, or perhaps close to 1, or somewhere in between? How long do you think we actually have before we have to get ready for this change that's coming?
So I don't think it's going to be like a one day it all changes. It's going to be a slow iterative process. Okay. So what we're likely to see, I think, is that some customers will be early adopters and will be using this themselves. And it'll be like a slow process where an app will come out and they'll add a piece of functionality that might just be really, really simple initially. That could be, hey, check that an organization has got the correct documents, for example, that it can review to ensure that a debt is valid. So, and that's it's a super simple thing, you know, that it may well ask, hey, can you send me through X, Y, and Z document? And that'll slowly grow out. It'll then use that information, and it might use that to go ahead and understand, you know, the next year could be, hey, that doesn't look right. This was sent wrong. This transaction doesn't add up. So it's just going to be a slow build of kind of like auditable kind of processes that it's going to bleed out, and the organizations building these, they're just going to go by kind of market trends and what's working and what's not. Um, so it might take 5 years to kind of get something kind of fully blown that does everything. But we need to
Hmm.
be thinking about just those initial steps first of all. Like if somebody's using an app just to ask for validation that a debt is valid by asking for nauseas, annual statements, credit agreements, how would we process that, at scale? Um, these are kind of the things that we should be kind of asking about. So I don't think it'll be a big bang. It'll be a slow simmer moving to a boil.
Yeah, and do you see sort of customers wanting to, as you say, over time, build confidence in AI that they'll be wanting to share that personal information with an AI when they're not perhaps entirely certain where that information might go? Do you see that as being a threat, or something that customers will just overcome as AI becomes more ubiquitous in our daily lives?
I think it's there already. I think people are sharing
Right.
information right now, and it all comes down to convenience. I think something that is the foundation of all of this is consumers want convenience. And we see that in self-service. If AIs are convenient or are making it easier for them to do stuff, they're doing it, trade their personal information for that. And I would be surprised if folk in this call already aren't providing information and not really caring because it provides, it saves them time and it provides
Mm.
good outcomes.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I forget the number of times, Google asked me, "Are you okay with what you're telling Google?" And you just press yes, right? Because it's easier to press yes than to read all their details. So yeah, okay. You spoke about the regulators, and obviously in the UK, the FCA is taking a pretty, I'd say, a hands-off approach. It's a outcomes-based regulation framework, pretty much principles-based, and their approach, as certainly I perceive it, is they're not wanting to get too deep into creating new regulation. Um, do you think that's the right approach for the regulator to take, or should they be taking a more proactive approach in terms of constraining how, you know, sort of AI is used, particularly in financial services?
I think the regulator should be involved as much as it needs to be to understand the risks, for example, for organizations using AI. I don't think it can really contail consumers. Consumers are, if they want to use it, they're going to use it, and it's
Mm.
almost going to be, try to take a tool away from someone is, I think, nigh on impossible. Um, I think their stance is probably right just now. They don't really know where it's going, how fast it's going to move. But I think we just need to be having kind of conversations. It's about, having kind of workshops where, um, the industry talks about this. They say, look, is this going to be a problem and how would we deal with it? And understanding, well, what would the regulator's stance be if X, Y, and Z happens? That we're not hit all of a sudden one day if we're unable to due to a massive influx of something, we're getting fined. Um, it just needs to be fair. I think
Yeah,
I think both sides want good outcomes. It's just having conversations and having enough kind of transparency between each other that we work towards good outcomes on both sides. So I think, yeah, it's just keep dialogue open and risks at both sides. I suppose open that both can see each other's opinion on the matters.
mm. Okay. Do you think we'll ever get to a stage where perhaps organizations will be asking consumers to declare whether they're actually using AI as part of their process, to declare that, as you say, in the spirit of sort of transparency, or do you think that that's not something that's going to fly very very easily?
You can certainly ask, but I don't think they're going to answer accurately all the time.
Yeah.
I think really you have to figure out whether that's really practical. And um, I think yeah, it would be useful, but practically, is it going to happen? Probably not. So is there much point really trying to request it? You ask yourself. I think it's a very difficult one to
Yeah.
operationalize.
Yeah, and look, you spoke about the importance of having the human in the loop. Do you think customers will, sorry, sort of firms will want to or will change their approach to customer service in terms of making sure that if they're not sure whether it's an AI actually they're talking to as opposed to a customer, or certainly an AI on behalf of a customer, that they will perhaps take a more relaxed approach to maintaining high standards of customer service, or do you think that they will just come at it more than a transaction approach, that they just want to deal with the volumes that you suggest might come?
I think it will make building relationships potentially harder. Unfortunately, I don't think organizations can, they might not know whether they're dealing with a customer or an AI. So
Mm,
I think they're just going to have to hold themselves to the high standards that they've set for themselves, no matter
yeah.
whether it's AI or not. Because it shouldn't really matter, to be honest. Like at some point, a customer might go in and read this stuff, to audit what their AI has been saying and what the responses are. I don't think people are going to lose interest in reading the responses. I think they'll become more observers rather than the people having to action it themselves. It will just become convenient for them to use it.
Mm.
So I think the responses, we have to understand that people are going to read them. And you'd hope that the response that organizations are providing is based upon that.
Okay. Okay. So look, obviously, we know, as you suggested, one of the ways that organizations can get ahead of this is by making sure that they do have their own sort of AI capable platform and use it. Thinking about sort of senior leadership in an organization who's responsible for making sure that the behavior of their organization is compliant, they understand how things are working. As organizations and consumers, as we all start using AI more and more, how do you think the role of those senior leaders will change, where perhaps they're not as perhaps certain about how processes are working in the future? How do they maintain that level of oversight of their internal processes where more and more AI is being used all over?
So I think it's probably almost the same as kind of what they're doing just now. The difference is that rather than people being kind of QA'd, you probably want to QA your actual AI. And I believe technology roles and technology directors, whether it's CTOs, CIOs, need to get much more kind of involved in that QA process to ensure that the quality of responses is where they expect it to be. KPIs will evolve to ensure that the standards are good. Um, and I really think, to be honest, that the way roles are going to move is we're going to end up with more experts within a business that supervise AIs. I don't think people are going to disappear altogether. I think we're just going to have fewer roles, but more senior roles rather than administrative. And the benefit, I think, for the whole industry is they're going to be better paid, I'd imagine. So we're going to have different types of roles. And the benefit, I'd hope, of that is that consumers get better responses, higher quality responses, um, and more timely responses. And fewer mistakes are made because there's consistency involved.
Yeah.
So I think, I feel like a lot of the stuff said is very doom and gloom, but I actually think it is going to be a positive step for us on both sides.
Mhm.
I think, from the consumer, I think it'll be positive because it'll be very much they'll have more comfort that organizations have been held to account, what they're paying is correct, and it will give them a certain element of control they feel like they have. And from an organization's perspective, the quality that's actually that happening, consistency, though some risks are going to be elevated, I think in some ways other risks are actually going to decrease. So overall, I think this is a positive move for the industry. It's just we're going to have a period of change that's going to be taking place over the next couple of years that we all need to understand it's coming and be involved in it. You don't want to be kind of left behind because if the industry as a whole is kind of moving forward and you're not, It only leads to one inevitable outcome, I suppose, for organizations.
We have a few more minutes left with Carl. If there's any questions that anyone would like to ask, please do post them in the chat, and we'll happily answer them for you. Carl, just a couple more. So let's assume that I for a moment, I'm engaged and want to try and do something about this. Where should I start? What should be my first move in terms of trying to understand the problem and to persuade the leaders within my organization that it's something that they should react to and do something about?
Some organizations, I think, have got the necessary kind of talent internally that you'll be able to kind of workshop this yourselves and understand your gaps and have the technical capability to take huge steps forward. Some organizations aren't going to have that. They've got different kind of like team setups. I think whether it's engaging externally or using kind of internal resource, it's probably just having a discovery workshop where you work through different scenarios to understand what is a gap that you have. What are your problems, and just lay that out, because that gives you the foundations of, well, what should my next step be? A lot of the organizations we work with, the initial step in all this is that their data is all over the place. It's they've got siloed data on different systems. They've got a core collections or lending platform. They've bolted on a chatbot. They've bolted on an IVR, a customer portal, a complaint system, and they might bring it all together into a data warehouse, which is great for reporting, but that doesn't help you operationalize that data. That's really good for doing analytics and for reporting out of, but being able to operationalize it, it's not really designed to do that in the most kind of efficient kind of manner. So I think what we see is understanding, I suppose, kind of just your technology landscape and what steps you need to take in order to begin this journey is the beginning, because it's not a journey where at the moment, we don't actually know where AI is going to go. I think there's going to be huge changes in the next kind of like 5 years with what's possible, but the consistent piece in all of this is that the underlying data needs to be good and needs to be well structured, and you need to be able to operationalize it. If you get that right, no matter what happens over the next 5 years, you're in a good position to capitalize on these changes. If you do not have that right, you have a project to do in order to kind of get there in the first place. So get the foundations right, first of all, I think is step number one. Whether you're doing that with an internal team or you engage the likes of be a conversation with me or a chat with Arum.
I absolutely agree with that point. There's a number of clients who talk to us about, where should we be doing, what should we do with AI, how should we be using it, without really thinking about, well, actually, it depends on data, right? Without data, it won't do, or meet your expectations in that. So I think it's absolutely great advice there. Okay. All right, my final question to you. If there was one thing I could do to get my organization ready for AI, for better use of AI, or defending myself against AI, as you've sort of set out here, what could I do? What would be the sort of one golden piece of advice that you could give me?
I would normally go to what effectively I've just said, which is get your house in order for your data. But if I take that as kind of a given, I think it's having somebody who is an advocate within the business that wants to start to play around with this. Even if it's just one thing they're looking to do, get your house in order, and then just create one test case. Okay. Don't go completely overboard. We see too many organizations out there working on projects that never make it out of test. Work with an organization that you'll have an internal advocate and sponsor, working with the likes of one of us too, and just putting something live. Learn from just putting a single thing live is my first step and recommendation for folk. it can always be improved upon. You know, if you have the right foundations, you shouldn't be trying to go big bang. You can always set something up and then just either iterate upon it or then put something else on and just learn from that kind of experience. I think that's key. It's because none of us will have all the answers right now, but we want to be able to have the ability to grow out this stuff over time.
Okay, great. We have a question from our audience. If I can put it to you, please,
Of
Carl.
course.
How do financial institutions remain the primary source of trust when customers increasingly trust their own AI advisors first? So I guess, who should people trust?
So I think that's where this kind of radical kind of transparency in my mind comes about. We don't want it to be a case us or them. We want to be working off of the same data set, so that there are fewer kind of conflicts. Because in my view, if their AI says that we're wrong, they're going to query it. You know, no matter whether it's they believe it, you know, 100%, 50%, 25%. If it's done in such a convenient manner that at pressing the button they can get confirmation, they're going to do it. So let's align ourselves that it's not an us or them approach, that we put kind of the right kind of solutions in place, that we're both working off of the same kind of foundations. And that really comes that the AIs that they're using, we make sure that they are they have access to the information that we have access to in a clear, concise manner, that you know, we don't end up with different outcomes. We end up at least working on the same kind of like same text and same numbers.
Great, thank you. Well, I'm sorry to say our time is up. It's amazing how time flies in these sessions, and some very interesting topics that we've discussed today and before. For those of you who want to know more about the Arum Approved framework, there's some information on screen, but you can also go to our website and to find out more. And it just leaves me to say thank you very much for joining us, and we hope to see you on the next webinar. Thank you very much, and bye.
Thank you. Cheers.